Welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. We're here today with family lawyer Milana Shimanova. Thank you, Milana, for having us. My name is Oksana Davydova with my co-host Margarita Moshe.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me
today to share your experiences, your wisdom, your knowledge. We are very thankful to all our guests because the amount of information that they share is very helpful to our youth who are watching and guiding them in the right direction. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So before we begin, Milana, if you'd like to just tell us why family law? We'll start there.
Dive right in.
Because most people run away from it. I mean, to be fair, right? Most people run away from it because it's very contentious. And I feel like there's more arguments there's more bickering and arguments than actually practicing law. I mean, please correct us.
No, that's actually 100% true. And it's also very emotionally charged because the clients are in such an emotionally distraught area or time of their life. It kind of, sometimes if you don't have thick skin, it kind of like seeps into your personal life, your family life, whatever. So why family law? When I graduated, it was really a time for, the agencies like ACS, Legal Aid were all on a hiring freeze. And so I applied to a bunch of different firms. I did foreclosure defense for a month or two, and it was not for me. I never tried PI. I was part of a wills and trusts clinic in Toro law, but it wasn't for me. Dealing with that kind of clientele was just, it wasn't enough action. I guess that's the way I would put it. When I got a job, my first job at a law firm, the very first thing that my then boss said was, "You're going to hit the ground running. Get ready, put your sneakers on, let's go." Next day, the very next day that I started, it was really go time. Grab this file, write this letter, make sure this client knows who you are, make sure, you're ready for court tomorrow. And it was go since then. And I've, that rush of, just the litigation game has just been amazing for me. It is emotionally charged. There are clients who are very, bickering prone. I don't know if that's even the right word to say it, but they're very contentious. They're very litigious with each other. And in my opinion, unnecessarily so. I believe very firmly that any and every case can be settled. If you have two reasonable people, you sit down at the table and you just resolve it. You talk things through. And it's not only about being reasonable, because it has to be that people are ready for it. If you're not ready to sit down at the table to actually resolve it, to move on with your life, nothing that any attorney is going to do or say is going to.
Sometimes they don't want to.
Right.
Sometimes they don't want to. Sometimes they're not ready to. And a lot of times their emotions cloud their judgment. And really, you have to be able to see the forest for the trees. What is the bigger picture? And who's the one that's actually benefiting or being hurt by all this? Most of the time, sadly, it's the kids who are being hurt by this. So yeah.
You said something very interesting. You said reasonable people. Let's go there, right? Would you say in your type of area, especially when people are so angry and they're this part of their life right now where I realize when, I've seen divorces and they're so angry at each other that they don't remember that I heard this very interesting quote, that they were so angry at each other, they don't remember that there was a time where they really loved each other.
Right.
So when you say reasonable, because they're so angry, are they really reasonable due to that? Is there any reason at all?
It's funny you say that, because when by the time I get involved, most of the time, they've gone through their bickering. Some have tried mediation. Some have tried, family therapy, couples therapy, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, when I say reasonable, it means that you've put away the emotions and the hate, and you're just really looking to move on with your life. Are you willing to move on with your life and actually put this chapter behind you? It's not something that you can ever close out and say, I'm done with, I'm never gonna, look back at that part of my life or, be a part of that person's life. That person is always gonna be a part of your life, and it's one way or another. And so it's really a matter of, can we get to the part where your anger subsides, you're done with this chapter, let's move on. Let's close this and move on. That's what I mean when I say reasonable.
Yeah, it's a lot of emotions involved in this. How do you manage to separate yourself from, something that sometimes can touch you a little bit more than another, client? We all have those.
Yes.
How do you really try to detach yourself from something like that?
it's funny. Somebody asked me that the other day. A potential client said, "Well, how are you going to handle this? Like, are you going to be able to like detach yourself from my case specifically?" And to me, it's you have to have thick skin, no question about it. You can't let any of this seep into your personal life. And what I always say is that I see what people are going through and how people are, acting towards each other and as a result of the other. And I just come home and I have my kids that much tighter. And I thank my husband that much more. It's really a matter of being able to separate and leaving things at the door.
Is there anything ever that you've heard that was so outrageous that you couldn't even believe it, that you can stick out?
At this point, I've been doing this for so long. It's like, it's all the same.
How many years have you been in practice now?
16.
Wow.
16 years, wow. So tell us a little bit about your practice. You're a solo practitioner. You've been in practice 16 years. Your office is in
Fresh Meadows.
Fresh Meadows, Queens.
Yes.
So you are everything.
I'm everything. I do have, not a paralegal, but I have an attorney of counsel that works with me. I have other attorneys that I either, bounce ideas off of, or, we cover each other's cases should that be the need. But yes, I am the face of the company of my firm. But how does my practice run? I get referrals through word of mouth. I do not advertise, not for any other reason, but just because I like to keep things boutique and intimate. So that's pretty much it. I have not taken any interns just yet. If anybody's interested, by all means, give me a call. We'll mentor, but the person needs to be able to put on their shoes and go running. That's how our practice is run. We're on the go all the time. I'm in court 95% of the time. I'm in the office, 2% of the time. The other time I'm working from home, fielding calls, writing motions, whatever it may be.
The majority of your work is in Queens, or would you say any of the other boroughs?
I do a lot of Queens, Nassau, and Brooklyn. I try not to go to Staten Island. I've done that maybe twice in my entire career, and it's not for me. Suffolk County is also something that I try to stay away from, but again, wherever the clients take me.
How long have you been on your own?
How long have I been on my own? I want to say 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So you already have it down to science in terms of how you work and how you manage everything?
Yes. I don't know about a science, but I'm definitely a lot more, I have my system, and it's been working so far.
So you said you like it boutique, meaning you don't want to scale to get even more associates or paralegals or anything. You like the way you run it boutique.
I like the way I run a boutique specifically because when I used to work in a firm, people would come and hire the firm because of the head attorney's name. Mm-hmm. And then they would be, pushed off to an associate and be like, well, wait a second, I hired that guy. Why are you here? Right. And so to me, I've always said, if I'm going to go out on my own, I am the face of this company and people come to hire me.
Right.
So they hire me and they get me. And that's why it's boutique. And, there's only so much that I could take on and there's only so much that I want to take on. And I always say I cherry pick my cases. If it's a case that I'm not comfortable with, that I know is going to take a lot more of my time than I'm willing to give, then I refer it out. It's a lot of love to give around.
Yeah, absolutely. So word of mouth. So you do very well with word of mouth. You don't advertise. So you've been quite successful for so many years. Where do you get most of your business from? Who?
Other attorneys that I've worked with.
Opposing counsels?
Some opposing counsel, some, attorneys in different areas. I have a very good friend who's a criminal defense attorney. He sends me a lot of his clients who are dealing with family court issues. Former clients who have, friends, neighbors, whatever, family, friends, whoever it may be.
Mm. Okay.
That's amazing. I mean, I send you clients and I heard about you. Thank you. I heard about you through somebody else. And whenever somebody asks me for a family law, you're on my list. I have a couple of attorneys and you're on one of my lists. And I think that's amazing because you took a niche, right? And you make it work to you, but also for others. So that must be amazing because you have, I'm sure, you have a family and everything and it's time manageable for you, right?
So this is what I tell most of my clients. I say that my workday starts at 8 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. and then again at 8 p.m. until midnight. That is my workday, my typical day of work aside for Friday, of course. during, the 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., that's my family time. If I have the ability to respond to a text and email, I do. Otherwise, it's family time, homework, whatever it may be. After 8 p.m., I'm on the phone, I'm writing motions, I'm, writing emails, whatever it may be. But it's really geared, that's my typical schedule, essentially.
No, because you're a mom, you juggle a lot of responsibility. You have young children, so you want to be present as possible, I would assume. So that's a good model to run. I did have some questions. As far as it's family law, there's a lot of the times you have domestic violence as, an a key, sometimes unfortunately a key component in the issue. How do you navigate such situations?
Well, you have to be able to discern whether those allegations of domestic violence are legitimate or a strategy. And sadly, a lot of it is just posturing. For instance, I have a case right now where we're in Supreme Court for the divorce. The parties are arguing over, custody issues, and the wife runs to family court to get an order of protection without her attorney's knowledge, without her attorney's approval. She just went to get, and quite frankly, I've said this to the other side. I've said, this is posturing on your end. You know that, and the judge will not look at this favorably. And lo and behold, the judge admonished her and said, you could have filed it in Supreme Court if this was a legitimate issue. And depends on the severity of the allegations, of course. I'm not going to discount the fact that there are issues of domestic violence that need to be addressed, especially in a divorce case where in a family law issue. But the point is that the discerning of whether it's legitimate or not is what's most important.
Mm-hmm. And what if you find there isn't an accountability to that? Well, I should say, if you do see that it is credible evidence, do you get a criminal lawyer involved, or do you ever ask for assistance from a criminal attorney?
If there are issues of criminality, then police reports are filed, and that's where the clients the criminal side of it is through the defense. So if I'm representing, let's say, the abuser, then they need to find a criminal defense attorney. I obviously have a Rolodex of attorneys that I refer out to. So yes, in that sense we do. But if I'm representing the victim, then I would push for the orders to be in accordance with what my client is looking for, the stay away or the refrain from, or to make sure that the person doesn't come near the home and the children and the schools, the business, whatever it may be.
When it comes to courts, do you see a trend in terms of like you said, when some of it's just allegations, how the courts treat such allegations, especially because domestic violence is such a big issue?
So I believe that the courts have really, how do I say this? The courts really try to protect the victim. Whether their allegations are true or not is not up to the intake judge. The intake judge reads the allegations and acts accordingly and issues orders accordingly. And it is up to the fact-finding judge to then determine the veracity of all of that. But most of these cases, if they are in fact, loosey-goosey, we'll call it, then they kind of go away on their own. Because if they are used as a negotiation tool, or as a posturing tool in whatever other cases they have going on, either the divorce or criminal court or even landlord-tenant court, then they kind of seem to they're used as a bargaining chip, and they go away on their own most of the time.
Interesting. And before, so you say most of the time you're in court, right? And you mentioned mediation earlier. Before somebody comes to you, is there a process you put them through? Did you try mediation? Before we get to court, is there a way you do things specifically?
Not specifically. I do recommend mediation to attorneys, to clients all the time. If that's something, again, that depends on how reasonable two parties are. I have a case right now where I was just retained where the wife actually begged the husband to do mediation, and he's absolutely refusing. There's no question about it. He's just, he hired an attorney. They filed, their RJI. They're ready to go to court to fight. So it's not something that I would put them through. It's something that they choose on their own. Do I have a list of mediators that I recommend? Sure. But it's not something that I require prior to my involvement, no.
So I've been told that you're quite a shark in your industry. What happens when you're up against another shark? Like, it's very like the two personalities with the going at it, the clashing. How do you manage that?
You have to maintain a level of professionalism no matter what. And at the end of the day, the collegial environment between myself and my adversary remains. The clients, once you're done with their case, they're gone. So you still have to be respectful. You still have to, abide by the law, by the procedure. Do personalities clash? Sure. But this is where you put away your emotions to be able to resolve things for the client, to do things for the client. It's not about you. It's about the client at the end of the day.
You have to advocate for them. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So tell us, I know in the PI industry, we work on a contingency fee. In family law, it's more based on retainers. What is the opening, let's say, for a retainer to use your services?
Well, that depends on the case. That depends on the issues revolving the case. Some cases are as simple as, draft an agreement and we're done. Other cases are a lot more involved. Mm-hmm. So there's really no standard fee. There's, it's a case-by-case basis.
Case by case. Okay.
Getting to agreements, do you do postnuptial and prenuptial agreements?
Absolutely.
Have you seen, I've noticed a trend that they've become very popular recently.
They have become very popular, and I absolutely advocate for them.
I do too.
I've had a lot of very young clients whose parents have come to me and said, my daughter or my son is getting married. I want them to have all the protection that's needed in the event of. So, draft an agreement. Now, granted, these children are very young. These young people, excuse me, I hope you can cut that out. These young people are very young, and they do get married young enough such that, either the parents are assisting them financially, or the parents have put their name on a bank account for whatever reason, or, they have properties in, ownership with the family, with the siblings, whatever. So these agreements are so important to be able to separate the assets and really just give people a peace of mind.
No, yeah, I see it. I see it definitely, even in our community, I see a trend with the prenuptial agreements. And for the most part, I think people are open to drafting them. How long does it take to draft something like that if they needed it right away?
If they need it right away, it could take, a couple of days, really. But the more time you give before the marriage helps. It legitimizes it, I want to say. Mm-hmm. There's no claim for duress. So in that sense, it's very important to be able to draft this prior to and negotiate it and really have the other person review it and let it sink in.
Have you seen that prenuptial agreements help you when the couple's getting divorced in terms of making things a little bit speedy and less bickering?
Absolutely. I have a case right now. There's a prenup. The gentleman's business is included in the prenup. And so the only issues to be decided in their particular case are child support and child custody. So in that case, his business is his and solely his. She can't, there's no way she can go after it, for instance. But so that case is, I don't want to say simple enough, but it's definitely separates the issues.
I have a friend recently who's actually going through a divorce, and she was complaining to me that her lawyers basically milking her. Some of these lawyers, they do try to drag out these cases for, much longer than necessary. If you see that from an adversary, let's say, how do you approach them about it? Do you discuss it with them?
I have a case like that right now. It's so frustrating. It's my specific case. It's a long-term marriage. The parties have multiple properties, very high net worth family. It's really just a matter of who gets what distribution from these properties. That's it. Right. There's no child support issue. There's no custody. There's no alimony / maintenance. So it's really a matter of let's distribute these assets. And all my adversary wants to do is just discovery and just figure out, give me the leases to all the properties. And my client keeps saying, why is she trying to milk it? And what do I do in that case? We have to, we have to go with the flow. There's nothing more that we can do.
So if your client tells you, why are we dragging this out, you explain to them that it's the adversary.
I explain to them that this is the process. They have every right to discovery. They have every right to seek, all the financials that they're looking for. This is, their right. They have a right to do the depositions. We have to comply, plain and simple.
So some divorces that it can be so simple, they can be dragged out for 5 years unnecessarily. So
Absolutely. Sadly.
yeah, sadly.
I'm sure the courts aren't helping with that either. Have the courts speed up since COVID? Because I know there was a huge backlog in family court.
There was a huge backlog, and I think that they have sped things up pretty nicely. It doesn't help that the adjourn dates are so far apart, but yes, in terms of their filings and their, getting to the dockets, yes, they have sped up.
Speaking of family court, have you noticed any trends happening right now with regards to New York City or New York State in family court that involves children at all?
I'm going to tell you like this, just to give you a quick background. I do matrimonial law where the clients, and family law where the clients hire me directly. I also do assigned counsel work where I am on the 18B panel in Queens County, and I get assigned to cases where it involves indigent individuals who aren't able to afford an attorney, or to children. So I see a lot of the custody disputes that way as well. So a lot of the family court judges have, in my experience, have moved away from the single parent custodial arrangement to a 50-50 split. And this is something where, previously mothers would say, well, I'm the, primary caretaker. The child lives with me. I get full custody. You come and visit. Now the courts have moved away from that. And the courts have really allowed for a 50-50 split where the child lives part of the time with the mother, part of the time with the father, depending on their, locations from each other, their, distance between, two homes, etc. So I have seen that trend, and, I commend that trend because it's, children need both parents, plain and simple. And the idea that one parent has a superior right to a child is not something that's, that's looked upon favorably at all.
The other thing I would say, it's given that you said some parents are or families are more reasonable, would you say that that they're more reasonable when there's children involved and they're more amicable to co-parenting amicably?
It's actually quite the opposite.
Really?
Sadly, yes. I've seen that parents want to fight more because of the children. Where they're so much more acrimonious, and specifically because, I'm the primary parent, I tell you what to do, or, you don't get to decide things on behalf of the child. And that's where a lot of the acrimony comes from. So no, to answer your question, no, they're not more reasonable. They're actually a lot less reasonable at that point.
That's sad because the whole concept is the best interest of the child.
Correct.
Very sad.
It is very sad. And I've tried to explain to many of my clients, and I say this very clearly. If a client comes into my office and says, I want to make sure that parent never sees this child, I do not represent that parent. I don't believe in that personally. And as an attorney and as a parent, why would you put that child through that? It's not something that is in the best interest of the child. It is a losing case. Now, granted, I did have a case years ago where the mother came to me and said, I don't want this father to see this child. He was an active drug user. In front of the child, in front of the entire family, would come into court, high, and it was just a really sad situation. So granted, I got her custody. We made sure that the order specifically says that he does not have any access to the child until and unless he proves that he is clean for at least 6 months. Mm-hmm. It's been, I want to say 7 years, and he's still not been able to.
Oh, then wow.
That's sad.
It's very sad. Very sad. So with situations where you have, like you had mentioned before, families who have a lot of assets involved, a lot of financials involved, sometimes it can be quite complicated to split that up and discern what goes to who or how much. At what point do you get like a financial advisor involved?
A lot of times when we're dealing with high net worth individuals, we have forensic accountants that get involved. And these are forensic accountants that are appointed by the court. That are, it's invaluable information that they're able to discern from all the business records. Both forensic accountants and maybe, even business evaluators, if that's needed in that particular case. So do I get a financial advisor kind of to help me navigate? Possibly, but it's mainly the forensic accountants that we rely on.
Oh, I never knew that they were assigned by the courts.
Well, they have to be neutral. So if I'm hiring my own for my client, the other side is not going to essentially take that report as into evidence or even allow that to come into evidence because it's skewed.
Right.
Just as a house appraisal, for instance,
right.
Where, if one party gets the appraisal, you can assume that they're asking for it to be, to their benefit.
Right.
So that's why it's important to get the court-appointed individuals involved. Appraisals.
Them if they're court appointed.
Most of the time it's 50-50. Sometimes it's pro rata where it depends on the income. If, he makes more, it's 70, 30, 80, 20, whatever it may be.
Interesting. Speaking of pro rata, I dabbled in family law when I was in law school, and we were doing like part of internship type of thing. And the one thing I found shocking, and I still find shocking, is that the child support that the parents pay, it doesn't even cover daycare if you calculate based on what it is. Because I find that astonishing that we have yet to change the child support that is paid by, I know it's pro rata depending on how much each parent makes, but it's so low.
So I don't know that I agree with that, because child support, specifically pursuant to the statute, covers the food, shelter, and clothing of the child. Then there are statutory add-ons for childcare, which is the daycare, educational expenses, if there are any, unreimbursed medical expenses. So there's the basic child support, and then there's the add-ons that cover the issues that you're referring to. So, it's 17% of the gross income, not the net income. So, a business owner can write off whatever he wants, but at the end of the day, we look at the top line, not the bottom line. So those things are covered. There's no question about that. And they are paid on a pro rata basis, meaning depends on who's earning what, what everybody's earning capacity is. It's not only what they're earning, it's about what are they capable of earning.
That's so interesting, right? Especially now, everything is so expensive.
That's what I'm saying. I'm surprised they still have not changed that, nor has there been any legislation or anything looking to change that, or no?
No, not that I've seen.
Have you seen a trend? I see a lot of couples now not pursuing like a legal marriage. They're more like common law marriages. What rights do they reserve? What rights do they really have when they're in a common law marriage as opposed to a regular?
So New York is not a common law state. That's first off. Second of all, when especially in the Jewish community, where you have, somebody who says, well, we never got married legally, we only have a ketubah. In New York State, the ketubah is recognized as a legal marriage. So they can pursue all the remedies in a court for, divorce as well, equitable distribution, maintenance, child support, whatever it may be. So regardless of whether it's, a ketubah or a legal marriage, all the same
rules would apply. So it doesn't matter if they get married at City Hall, if they're registered as husband and wife, if they have a ketubah, it basically represents a marriage license.
Absolutely.
And that wasn't always the case, was it?
I think for the most part, it's been the case, for a while. And I think it's just recently become a lot more known.
So there's really no rhyme or reason not to.
No.
But what about under a federal standard? Because it's considered a marriage in New York State, but the federal guidelines are different.
Well, the divorce law, matrimonial law, is governed by the state.
Right.
So the federal system doesn't really apply to it.
Well, I mean, more in terms of like tax purposes, right? Because when you file federally. So usually file either married or head of household or, single. If you're not, depends if they accept the ketubah as married legally.
In that sense, I don't think that the federal government really checks anybody's, marriage certificate.
Right.
Like when you file taxes, they don't say, well, oh, now you're filing married with this person. Show me proof that you're married. Or if you're filing, single head of household, show me proof that there's a divorce agreement. I don't, at least not that I've seen, they don't really look into that. So it's really a matter of, if you get audited, then you're kind of, in the hot seat. But I don't think anybody's checking.
What if the spouse moves to another state like Florida or Arizona? How do you manage like divorces in that situation?
Well, it depends on the assets. Where are the assets? If they're in New York, it's a New York case. Then we deal with the New York law. If one of the parties lives here and the other party, moves away, and the assets are in that state, depends on how long they're living in that state, and whatever it is, then that state governs.
Have you had a case like that recently, or?
It's been a very long time since I had an out-of-state divorce, and that case was really just hinged on the custody and visitation aspect. So it wasn't like an equitable distribution case with any of the assets from here and there. No.
Have you ever had a situation where you had two people from the same, like a husband and wife, both reach out to you? There was a conflict.
Oh, absolutely. The very first question that I ask is, what's your name and what's the name of your spouse? I have to make sure that there's no conflict. And I've told one client recently called and said, I don't know if my wife called you, but I really need your help. And he like spats off like, what's going on in there? And I said, wait a second, that sounds really familiar. What's her name? You have to pause for a second. He says, well, I don't really want to mention her name because I think she's like going around talking to all the attorneys. I said, well, then I can't talk to you.
So even if you had a call, let's say from the spouse, and she started discussing the situation, you wouldn't be able to take it anyway if she didn't end up retaining you?
Yeah, because I'm privy to, her side of the story. So, no, can't touch it. I'm very particular about conflict of interest like that. And again, I cherry pick my cases. So I'm very particular about what kind of cases I take and how I, want to handle them.
Right.
What are some common misconceptions that you've seen in whether divorce cases or custody cases?
Common misconceptions that you have to fight. Sometimes it's really like, take the armor off, sit down, take a breath,
Just have a conversation.
Just have a conversation. I tell my kids all the time, deep breath, and then let's talk. Like we can't talk when, emotions are high and just, everything is just up in the air. Take a breath.
Well, a lot of the times it's when the other spouse feels, they need to vindicate themselves because they've been cheated on or whatever it is. It's a lot of emotions in there. But they like in New York State, it's, there's no fault at cheating.
Right. So I tell my clients all the time, client will come in and say, he cheated, he's this and that, and I want to make sure that he XYZ. And my first statement to them is, if you're going to talk about morally or legal, morally, yes, they did wrong by you. If you want to take it up with your rabbi, your priest, your church, whatever, fine. But in New York, it's the law that governs. And the fact that they're a cheater, whatever maybe is of no import. You don't get more because, they cheated.
Yeah.
Unless you want to play on their emotion, fine. But that doesn't usually happen.
Yeah, there's really no fault. There's no fault in New York at all, right? So you don't need any reason to get a divorce.
That's correct. That's right.
It's interesting. I was just going to ask, what are the most common reasons you see people getting divorced? Apparently, you don't need a reason.
You don't need a reason. In my experience, it has been financially motivated. Less and less because of any, like emotional, abuse or, whatever. But it's really financially motivated a lot of the time. Mistrust because of finances, resentment because of, finances or, lack of transparency. So I think that the financial aspect is what drives it, sadly.
Recently, I also had a discussion with another friend of mine who their marriage hasn't been the greatest, but he said to me, he's been in the marriage quite a long time. And I said, why haven't you ever pursued a divorce? And sometimes he said, it's cheaper to keep her.
Yes. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
So it's very interesting that they're trying to people kind of live their own lives. They go about doing what they, need to do, but they stay in the marriage, they stay in the household because it's just more financially feasible to just stay.
Absolutely. The case that I mentioned earlier with with, the long-term marriage with lots of assets, my client has called me several times and he said, maybe I just want to get rid of this divorce. Maybe I just want to discontinue it and just keep living the way we are. Like, this is taking so long. It's just maybe like cheaper to just get it, just go back to the way it was. Obviously, there's a lot more issues. It's a lot more nuance in that case. So,
Are they still in the marital home together?
No. There was actually a mental breakdown in that particular case, and the wife was escorted out. So my client is in the marital home with a child, and so she's no longer in there.
But I have seen situations like this. You probably have too, where they're in the process of a divorce. They're living in the same home, marital home.
Oh, yeah.
But doing things separately, like roommates, essentially.
Yeah, like roommates. And I hate to say it like this, but that is the worst case scenario, where they're living in the same home. Tensions are always high. Emotions are always running on, at 100 miles an hour. And you're not nice to each other at that point. So why continue living together? People think it's a financial gain. Well, I'm not moving out because then, he's going to get the house or she's going to get the house.
Is that true? A lot of people say the first person who leaves the house is the one who basically gives up the rights to it.
No, that's not true at all. That's absolutely not true. I mean, the law is very clear. Right? There's an equitable distribution of that marital asset, assuming it's a marital asset, right? But there's also the concept of, and this isn't, in the law, but the concept of, well, he left and now I'm comfortable and he's continuing to pay all the expenses. What impetus do I have to settle this case or to actually, move this along or to even sell the house? That's where people start to get uncomfortable, and that's where they stay.
So you would recommend for them to separate from the home, like if they can?
If they can.
Yeah.
I feel like it would make it easier too, no? Less
Tension.
like you said, not just tension, but I think they would be more reasonable when they're apart from each other, as opposed
You would hope. You would think, right?
as opposed to next to each other constantly.
But what about a situation where they've been separated and all of a sudden, after quite a long time going through the divorce process, they decided to reconcile? Have you had situations like that?
I did have that situation. It was a very long time ago. They were literally at each other's throats. We would go into court and my client would call me and say, I want a motion file. It was just very contentious. And then all of a sudden I get a call from a rabbi. I will not mention this. I get a call from a rabbi and says, the parties have decided that they're going to work on their marriage and they're going to, try therapy with me. I said, fine. Let me know what happens. And they got back together.
Wow.
Are they still together?
Interestingly enough, they are.
Yes, that's
They had more children.
Really?
They had one child at that point, and now they have 3 or 4.
Wow, that's amazing. So I'm sure you get calls from rabbis all the time. They're like, the lawyer says, call my rabbi.
Not as much anymore, but I did at one point have a lot of rabbis reach out and say, we have to save this marriage. We have to, help these people. I feel like when people come to me at the point that people have, now come to me or have come to the decision to talk to a divorce lawyer, they're done with the rabbis. They're done with the idea of
trying to make it work.
right.
Yeah.
But at that point, really, I understand the rabbi's perspective trying to save the marriage, but what can you do at that point, Do you talk to them and say, hey, listen, are you looking to try any other?
I don't talk to them. I talk to my client.
That's what I meant, the clients. You talk to your client and say, listen, what avenue you're looking to pursue, especially since the rabbi is calling me on your behalf and saying, let's save this marriage.
In that specific case, I did. I sat my client down and I said, look, she's obviously willing to work on the marriage, whatever the situation was before. Maybe you can put that past you and move on. And he was very worried about about his assets, really. And so I said, let's put together a postnuptial agreement. She would absolutely not budge on that. And the rabbi said that, maybe I'll, work things out with them so that they can really understand their rights moving forward and how to split their assets while in the marriage as opposed to, in the divorce process.
So explain a little bit, elaborate on a postnuptial agreement, because a lot of people don't know the difference.
A postnuptial agreement is essentially an agreement that designates the property rights of each individual during the marriage. It's whatever assets you have as a marital couple, you can designate who gets what in the event of.
So to spring that on to, let's say, your wife of 10 years, and here's a postnuptial agreement.
To spring things on like that is not advisable, obviously. You have to talk about it. You have to discuss these things. But yeah,
Sometimes that alone can create conflict.
that does create conflict. But I think that because of the financial mistrust in a lot of families, that can kind of put things at ease. Like that'll put, somebody's mind at ease and say, you know what? He's got all these assets. Now I know what I'm entitled to, as opposed to, oh, well, all of that's premarital. I would get nothing anyway. So let me see, how I can navigate it now during the marriage and kind of, ease our minds.
No, it's very interesting now. Prenuptial agreements, yes, but now it's been very quite common to do postnuptial agreements as well, especially if there's new businesses or there's growing success, and especially in one spouse or another.
Right.
Have you seen more of that for women? Because I do see women now actually asking for that as well.
I definitely see women asking for postnuptial agreements and women asking for the prenuptial agreements. It's not uncommon. It's very, it's whoever's got, whoever holds the bag is the king, right?
Right.
Especially bag of money.
Usually it would be in the man, but now women have become very successful in their fields, and they're sometimes the breadwinners of the family. So understandably so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you see, nobody, like as stated earlier, with postnuptial agreements, whenever they arise, is it something usually that both parties agreeable to, and come to you and say, hey, listen, we want it drafted, in which case there would be no conflict of interest, right? Because you're representing.
No. I would only represent one of the parties, and I would either refer the other party to, let's say, an attorney that I work very closely with and I have a good relationship with, where I know they're not going to bring up, issues that are, they'll basically not nitpick at certain things, Yes, if it's something that they're both looking to do, then it's easier in that sense. But I only represent one party over the other. I'm not a mediator. There are mediators who do that, where they sit down with both parties to discuss their situation. But I only meet with one.
So a lot of our youth now are watching, and they're deciding which way to navigate into what kind of field of law. What would you say? What kind of advice would you give to a young person who is in law school, deciding right now what field they want to pursue and specialize in? How would you explain to them why family law is the right direction?
Well, I'll tell you like this. I think that it's important to really try out different fields. The legal industry is so vast. So you don't have to, kind of stick to just one, or maybe like a family member is in the legal field and you kind of just, go along that way. You don't have to do it. Just try everything out. I did foreclosure defense for like a minute. It was not for me. I was part of the wills and trusts clinic in Turo. Was not for me. I dabbled in real estate. Not for me. I kind of picked my field based on what interested me. And the one thing that drives me in this field specifically is the fact that when I see parents using their children as tools against the other parent, that to me is that's where I stand firm. Like, you can't do that. That is something that don't use your children. You have to be able to love your children more than you hate the other person. That's the one thing that I always use in court, and I tell all my clients that if you don't love your child more than you hate this other person, you're not ready to either resolve it or to understand the law and where we're going with this.
But I like what you said, and I agree with you. You have to try different things, right? Trial and error.
Absolutely.
Try different things until you know it's something you're passionate about and you would love to do and stick to it. Right. And even with that, I think couple years down the road, if it's something you see you're not liking, to your liking, you could always maneuver to something else, because the legal arena is so vast with so many different niches you can get into, that and all the skills you gain are all oh my God. Transferable. Thank you. I would say transactional. Thank you. All the skills you gain are transferable. So it doesn't matter what you really practice, because you could always pick up anything.
Absolutely. It's harder to start a new,
yes,
new field at a certain age or at a certain, expertise level. Like, for instance, I'm so used to the retainer way of doing things, right? Like a client comes in, signs a retainer and pays the retainer up front, as opposed to working on a contingency basis. that to me is like, is very foreign.
Yeah, well, because you would have to upfront all the money, all the expenses, and all your time
Right.
into the case. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely it's a different model.
Right.
But I think for family laws, that's the right model to use.
Right.
There wouldn't be any.
No.
There wouldn't be any other. So you would suggest for them to just try out every field and see.
Right. And even try out, working with an attorney before you apply to law school. Is this really something that you want to do? Is this really something that you care to do? There's so many other things you could do in life, aside from becoming an attorney. Like everybody you hear nowadays, I'm going to law school, I'm applying to law school. Great. But have you actually tried it? Is it really just the glitz and glamour of it that's enticing? Which is enticing in itself, yes, but you got to try it out.
It's not all glitz and glamour.
I was going to say, nobody sees behind the scenes.
Exactly.
And the late nights. Yes.
Midnight.
Late
8 to
night.
12, yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. But we do want to try to educate them to definitely experience a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And it's important to be comfortable because you're going to end up doing this for the rest of your life,
Right.
hopefully, presumably. So you want to be comfortable in the area that you decide. I always thought I did a family law clinic in law school, and I thought that was very helpful. It made me decide that I don't want to do family law. But
And luckily you were honest with yourself and actually, tried it and decided that.
well, I think for me it was a little bit more personal because I came from, a family that, my parents divorced when I was very young, and it just too much for me. I was like, no, this is too traumatic. I can't listen to this. It brings back too much. But it's definitely interesting. And if you have you're right about the thick skin. If you have this, the thick skin to deal with it, to deal with all the aspects, because it can go so deep.
Oh, absolutely.
But you deal specifically with matrimonial law. There's other family practice lawyers that deal with other aspects of family law. Like, I know I heard an interesting case recently where one of the grandparents was being kept from seeing the other children and grandchildren. Like basically,
Right.
he didn't know. So they had to get a family lawyer involved in that. And I said, I never really thought that you would need a family lawyer to get almost visitation or custody of a grandparent.
There are, lots of grandparents asking for rights to the child, visitation rights, whatever it is. I had a case years ago where the mother died, and the mother and the maternal grandmother resided in the same home with the child. And by statute, the other parent gets the child, unless you could show extraordinary circumstances, and that the maternal grandmother is the rightful custodian for the child based on that child's best interest. And we had an entire trial on that.
Wow.
I represented the child in that case where my position was that the child should stay with the grandmother. She's the only, other parental figure in his entire life. The father was a come and go kind of parent, and not even consistent at that point too. So my position was that the child should stay with the grandmother. The court ruled that the father got the child. We appealed it, and the court upheld the decision.
Wow.
Yeah. And the grandmother, I did represent the grandmother, so she had asked the court for grandparent rights, and the father fought it.
Wow.
The father fought it for a very long time. I think she gets to see the child like once every couple of months now, which is sad.
It's just sad, yeah, especially when you're so involved with the grandchild.
But once there's that acrimony created, what do you expect?
But it can go vice versa also with the elderly, especially I think in this case, the grandmother had dementia, so she was incapacitated, and they actually wanted to see her, so they had hired a lawyer just to get.
Right.
I think there was a guardianship involved and all that stuff. So, family law can be vast. It can be, domestic violence. It can be matrimonial. It can be custody.
Also do a lot of neglect and abuse cases. So like I said before, I'm part of the 18B panel in Queens, where I get assigned to, respondent or non-respondent parents and the children as well, where a parent who is under ACS investigation and an Article 10 is filed against them for abuse, neglect, maltreatment, etc. I then represent the parent. So I don't only do the matrimonial side of things, I also do the family court issues like that as well. And for as much as I hate to say it, but it's rewarding work. You get to see so many different kinds of cases come your way, and so many different clients with different perspectives on life. That's that's what I find rewarding about the matrimonial and family law practice.
And what about pro bono work? Do you do any pro bono work? I know recently I've heard there's a lot of organizations actually that look for attorneys. Sometimes they actually pay the attorneys. Sometimes they look for attorneys who do pro bono work. Do you?
I do not do pro bono work. There are organizations that I refer out to who do pro bono work. I have lots of cases right now where I represent a spouse with limited means, and the other spouse is even more limited means, and they're represented by an agency where they have to they're paid either through like private funding or government funding, but I don't do that specifically. I refer it out to that.
Refer it out.
Yeah.
But there are many organizations that people can reach out to, especially with limited funds, right?
Isn't it that?
I know. So there's legal aid, legal services that are specifically for people with limited funds so that they have the right to counsel as well.
Yeah.
And I think the court also appoints you counsel if you need one through the court system.
Yes. So that's what I meant when I said that I'm on the 18B panel. Okay. The assigned attorneys in family court and even in Supreme Court for purposes of custody, visitation, orders of protection. We are assigned on those cases as well. But when it comes to issues like, dividing marital assets, attorneys are not assigned to that.
Mm-hmm. Some more serious issues.
Yes.
Definitely emotional, very high emotionally charged cases are those, I'm sure. Listen, I commend you for doing this kind of work. It's not easy work. It can be frustrating. It can be definitely debilitating sometimes just to like detach yourself, even this work, from some of these things, some of these issues, especially with children involved. If you know that there's, things that are really going on behind the scenes that sometimes, you have to advocate for them, even though you're advocating for the client. Sometimes you kind of like say, oh, well, this is not really in the child's best interest, but you also have your client that you have to look out for. So it's difficult. It's challenging. It's rewarding, I'm sure.
It is. It's rewarding in the sense that you get to see through, the nonsense and kind of help guide the client to like the finish line. Most of the time, right? And my husband always says I'm more of a therapist a lot of times than I am an attorney, because a lot of people need the hand-holding. They'll call, in the middle of dinner and say, well, she told me this and she says that I can't this. It's like, okay, let's talk you off the ledge. Let's, take a breath. So a lot of times it's a lot of
therapy work.
I feel like that's most of the legal world, the legal spectrum, right? A lot of the times it really is just like they want to come and speak to somebody so that they're consoled a certain way, right? And they just want to be heard. That's what I've been noticing.
Yes, a lot of people just want to be heard. That's a very good point. The other day I had a 76-year-old woman come to consult with me, and she was just sick of her husband. She's 76 years old.
How long they've been married?
48 years.
Oh, wow.
She came to me the day after her 48th wedding anniversary. And she's like, I'm sick of it. I'm done. I want him out of the house. I want the house. And I said, I kind of talked her through like what her legal rights are and what his legal rights are, and, how the house would be split. And she was just so amazed at the fact that she would have to give him half the house. I worked for it.
Well, where is he going to live?
Exactly. So we're telling him to go live with the girl next door.
I love it that on some of these things that are still so.
Did she decide to retain you?
She's talking to her older children about it. She's trying to decide what to do. I mean, my advice to her was go talk to the referring attorney who was a trust and estates attorney. I said, go talk to them in terms of how you want to put your assets in a trust first and in your will before he would start the divorce process.
Oh,
I love that. That's
so you do work just closely with trust and estates attorneys as well. So. Oh goodness, so many different aspects of family law.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so Milana, we'd love to thank you for your time and the great stories you brought us today. Everything we learned from you, and please come back anytime, especially when you have any more interesting stories you'd like to share. And for giving not just useful information, but wise advice. You know, a lot of people are very, especially younger attorneys, are confused and like, well, what about this and what about that? And I think you gave them at least, you know, a little bit of an idea of what it's like to be a family law attorney. So hopefully it's helpful. I know you don't advertise, but if anybody wants to reach out to Milana, we'll more than just drop a comment, and we will connect you to.
Yeah, we'll connect you to her as well. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. It was great having you.
Yes, thank you.
And we wish you continued success. Yeah, we know you're a busy mom of 4 and you juggle a lot. We commend you on that.
Thank you.
Women are amazing multitaskers, so
We sure are.
keep shining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Milana.